My friends, the map of events in the Far East reveals that the nice and passive Japan of the last 80 years has just ceased to exist. While the world is distracted by crises in the West and the Middle East, the sleeping giant of the East has drawn its technological katana, and the gleam of the blade has left Beijing in absolute silence. What happened in the Taiwan Strait in recent days was not a routine exercise. It was a direct strategic humiliation against Xi Jinping. Japan entered the arena, and it didn't come just to observe but to demonstrate that it can neutralize China's brute force at any time and at any location. Decoding this move points to a historic break. The deployment of the destroyer JS Kazuma to the heart of the Taiwan Strait. It means that Japan has torn up the cautious diplomacy playbook and taken on the role of sheriff of the Pacific. While China roared with simulated blockades for 40 days, Japan responded with 14 hours of sovereign presence in waters that Beijing swears are theirs. And the result? The Chinese Navy, the largest in the world by numbers, just watched. That changed. It proves that real power doesn't lie in the number of ships, but in the technical ability to hold a position under the enemy's crosshairs. It's one thing to hit Philippine fishing boats with water jets, it's another thing to face a super powerful Japanese destroyer. Well, the Japanese didn't just sail. They staked their claim by proving that the Chinese blockade is a paper tiger in the face of Tokyo's precision. And to understand the gravity of this move, you need to look at the command room. But first, subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, and like the video. Japan is practicing what analysts call proactive pacifism. In practice, this means that Article 9 of the Constitution, which for decades prohibited the country from having an attack force, has become a relic of the past. The change in the interpretation of security laws now allows Japan not only to defend itself, but also to project power to ensure regional stability. Japan got tired of being a passive spectator to Chinese expansionism and decided that the best way to avoid war is to be more prepared for it than the aggressor. If you agree with this, comment here. This change in doctrine is reflected in the official security assistance program, the OSA. By tripling the budget to arm neighboring nations like the Philippines and Japan, Japan is creating a technological containment ring around China. Check out this move. This means that Xi Jinping is no longer just facing the United States Navy, but a network of allies equipped with cutting-edge Japanese technology. Japan has taken on the responsibility of being the guarantor of security in the Pacific, funding the resistance of countries that would be swallowed up by Beijing on their own. It's the awakening of a samurai who has traded iron armor for radar systems and interceptor missiles, and who now sets the tune China is forced to dance to. Stop for a second and reflect with me. Do you really believe that a country with Japan's history would invest billions in weaponry just as a precaution? The map reveals that Tokyo has identified a point of no return in China's aggressiveness. Pacifism only works when your neighbor is also peaceful. When your neighbor builds the largest navy in the world to intimidate the continent, pacifism becomes an invitation to invasion. Japan understood that its survival depends on being the piece that jams Xi Jinping's machine. And this transition from potential victim to strategic predator is what's keeping the generals in Beijing up at night. And once again, I repeat, Xi Jinping is a lion, a tiger devouring fishermen. But with military powers, he's thinking twice before taking any action. Look at Iran being abandoned. Look at Maduro being captured right under Chinese radar and defenses. My friends, Xi Jinping's humiliation was planned over 14 years, 14 hours of deafening silence. The JS Kazushi, one of the most lethal destroyers in the Japanese fleet, entered the Taiwan Strait and stayed there long enough for every Chinese radar to count the bolts on its hull. The fact that China did not send ships to intercept the intruder means that Beijing acknowledges the qualitative superiority of Japanese technology. Xi Jinping roared for 40 days. With blockade exercises, will they invade Taiwan or not? But when Japan decided to pass through the backyard that China claims as its own and stamps its feet and shouts, the Chinese response was the equivalent of a letter of repudiation written with trembling hands. They know what the JS Kazushi carries, and they know that a miscalculation there would mean the destruction of the Chinese fleet. The technical explanation for this humiliation lies in the ship's weapon systems. The JS Kazushi is equipped with phalanx close-in weapon systems, capable of firing 4,500 rounds per minute. This means that any Chinese missile or drone that tried to approach would be turned into metal scrap before even entering the impact radius. In addition, the SSM-1B anti-ship missiles and the 324mm torpedo tubes ensure that the destroyer can eliminate any surface or submarine threat with a single command. China has quantity, but Japan has precision lethality. Xi Jinping watched 14 hours of a lesson in sovereignty where Japan proved that the Taiwan Strait remains an international waterway regardless of what Beijing's maps say. But why didn't China attack? You must be wondering. Why didn't China intercept? Why didn't China tell Japan to turn back? The answer lies in a mix of human and technological factors. The Chinese Navy is a giant that has never been tested in a real war. Their equipment is either copies or evolutions of Russian and Western technology, but without ever being battle-tested. Japan, by contrast, operates in complete sync with US intelligence. Attacking the JS Kazushi would instantly activate the Mutual Defense Treaty with the United States, turning the local incident into a global conflict that China is not in a position to win right now. Jinping has been put in checkmate. If he attacked, he would lose the war. If he didn't attack, he would be forced to swallow a worldwide humiliation. He chose to back down. Yes, my friends, and this retreat is the clearest sign that China fears samurai technology more than it admits. Yes, but what the Chinese radars detected inside the hull of the Ikazuchi is what really caused panic in Beijing. The strategic map reveals that Japan is not just an archipelago, it's an insurmountable geographic barrier that keeps China's navy bottled up at home. The concept of the first island chain means that for China to project power to the rest of the world, it first needs to pass through the gates guarded by Tokyo. Japan stretches for thousands of kilometers, creating a samurai wall that monitors every Chinese move. If Xi Jinping decides to invade Taiwan, he will have to deal with the fact that Japan controls the vital straits through which his ships need to pass to reach the open ocean. Without control of these passages, the Chinese fleet becomes an easy target, completely exposed in a true technological shooting gallery. The flashpoint in this geography is the island of Okinawa. Their cooperation between Japan and the United States has created a trap for Chinese submarines with acoustic sensors on the seabed and constant patrols. Any Chinese attempt to move its underwater fleet into the Pacific is detected even before it leaves territorial waters. Okinawa is home to 30,000 American troops ready for combat, which means that any Chinese aggression against the Japanese islands automatically brings the world's greatest military power into the conflict. Japan has turned its islands into unsinkable aircraft carriers, creating an unsolvable dilemma for Beijing's strategists. Imagine Xi Jinping's frustration when looking at the map and realizing that his great navy is trapped in a lake guarded by high-tech samurai. Japan doesn't need to invade China, it just needs to keep the door locked. Japanese control over the Senkaku Islands and the Miyako Strait means that China doesn't have a guaranteed way out. If China tries to force its way through, it will have to face land-based missiles, patrol ships, and elite Japanese aviation. Japan has turned its own geography into a weapon of strategic strangulation, proving that in the game of power, your position on the board matters more than the number of pieces. But the biggest surprise in Japan's arsenal was hidden under a modest diplomatic name. For years, Japan operated the ships Zumo and JS Kaga, calling them destroyers. This was a maneuver to respect the old pacifist constitution. But the technical reality has now come to light. These ships have been converted into real attack aircraft carriers. With the capability to operate F-35B vertical takeoff fighters, Japan now has strike power that can reach the heart of China from any point in the ocean. And I'll link that video in the cards. Defensive Japan is dead. And in its place, an air naval power has emerged that can project force as effectively as American battle groups. And discovering this new samurai personality is devastating for China. Having aircraft carriers operating fifth-generation fighters means that Japan can establish air superiority over the Taiwan Strait without relying on vulnerable land bases. The F-35B is invisible to current Chinese radars, which means that Japan can destroy Xi Jinping's command centers before even being detected. Japan doesn't just have defense ships, it has stealth attack platforms that nullify the numerical advantage of the Chinese Navy. The secret has been revealed, and the message to Beijing is clear. The technological katana now has a global reach. This transformation of the Izumi and Kaga ships is the ultimate symbol of the new Japan. They are no longer keeping up appearances. By equipping these ships with cutting-edge American technology, Japan has integrated its fleet into the United States combat system, creating a joint force that China cannot match. Japan has proven that strategic patience has its limits, and when a samurai decides to arm himself, he does so with the best technology that money and intelligence can buy. Xi Jinping now looks to the horizon and doesn't see just patrol ships. He sees platforms of mass destruction that can end his dream of hegemony in a matter of minutes. Japan's awakening sent a message that echoed not only in Beijing but also in the Kremlin. The alliance between Japan, the United States, and the Philippines is the seed of a new Pacific NATO, which means that the authoritarian axis formed by China, Russia, and Iran now faces a wall of democracies armed to the teeth. Putin, who recently sent his old ships to visit Xi Jinping, realized that Japanese technology is the antidote to Russian aggression in the Pacific. Japan has proven that the era of impunity for Eastern dictators is over. The katana has been drawn and it will not return to its sheath until freedom of navigation is guaranteed. And the decoding of what is really happening behind the scenes of this new technological era continues in our safe environment. On rented land, the truth always hits a ceiling, and that's why the in-depth analysis of the map of events is handled in our intelligence bunker. We are already more than 3,000 subscribers, yes my friends, who finance the information that shields the mind and ensures that you understand the game before the pieces move. Access is available through the QR code that appears here on your screen. There's a link in the first pinned comment and also in the description. So come to the side that doesn't accept the official narrative as destiny. And for you who want to protect your family against the ideological mud that has taken over entertainment. Our series and movies channel delivers real culture without woke culture, without whining. Great recommendations for movies and series for you to enjoy with your family, including series and movies that portray what is happening right now
in the Middle East.
The link is also appearing in the links below and in the cards that will pop up on your screen. Subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, and leave a like to strengthen our information sovereignty. Do you think Japan should become a full military power again, or is that a danger to the world? Write your thoughts in the comments. Now shield your mind. I'm Shimon Oliveira, and I'll see you in the next video.